What's up, everyone? I'm Coach D, and oh my goodness, did I do you guys a solid. I watched 3 hours of Donald Trump on the Joe Rogan podcast so you wouldn't have to. So please, like this, share it, comment on it, subscribe to my page, because I don't know if I can recover from this. And spoiler alert, it is exactly what I said it was going to be. It was a ramble fest. It was Donald Trump just going off on tangents, doing the weave over and over again. And something that I don't think Donald Trump realizes, actually, I know he doesn't realize. He doesn't realize that he is the brunt of the joke about doing the weave. Because Joe Rogan was even like, oh, you're doing the weave and stuff. And then, the time that he was on another show, another show, he was like, oh, I'm doing the weave right now. And the podcasters were basically laughing at him, but he thinks they're laughing with him. But I digress. So I'll tell you this. Joe Rogan was 100% told that he could not fact check Donald Trump. He was also told not to bring up certain things that Joe Rogan knows were absurd during his debate with Kamala Harris. Because I watched Joe Rogan after the debate between Donald Trump and Kamala Harris, and he was going off on how much she baited him. She just got him to say outrageous things. She was obviously way more, ready for the debate than he was, and all of that. That never came up during this podcast with Donald Trump. So just to go over some of the highlights, of course, he brought up, Haitians in Springfield, Ohio. Now, Donald Trump never brought up how, when he said that they were eating dogs and cats or anything like that. And Joe Rogan never brought that up either. You would think if you had Donald Trump on your podcast and he starts talking about how 32,000 Haitians were dropped in a beautiful community of only 50,000 people, you would ask, oh, that thing you said during the debate that went viral, that got all the attention, where you said they're eating the dogs, they're eating the cats, they're eating the geese, whatever happened with that? You ever find out about that or anything? Nope. Joe Rogan never asked a question about it. He talked about Aurora, Colorado. Talked about how these gang members were taking over apartments and all that. That has been debunked. That was not true. There was something that happened with the gang, but they have not taken over an apartment complex, and they're not on the road to taking over an entire city in Colorado. The mayor has come out and said that's not true. The sheriff has come out and said that's not true. But Joe Rogan doesn't ask a question about it. They got into windmills. They spent I don't know how long talking about vibrations of windmills and how they're hurting the whales. And then, of course, Donald Trump brought up, go buy a windmill. You'll see it's like a cemetery of birds out there. They brought up, RFK Jr. not liking pesticides, and he's going to do so much to make us healthy. And anytime Joe Rogan did ask a question like, oh, how's he going to do that? There was never an actual answer for it. It's just RFK Jr. wants to make us healthy, and that's what he's going to do. And I'm serious about having him in my administration and everything. And then he talks about how he's not going to allow RFK Jr. to get near our liquid gold because I guess RFK Jr. doesn't like oil and gas, but Donald Trump, he loves oil and gas because that's all we have and everything, Talked about electric cars, and of course he talked about how bad those are and everything, but he does like Teslas because Elon Musk, endorsed him and all that. There was just so much in this, and so I don't even know for sure. I'm going to show you guys this short video that shows you that there was even a point in there where Joe Rogan was like, okay, enough of this rambling, my guy. Like, we need to get you back on course, because no one, understand something, no one but Donald Trump thinks that the weave is some sort of like genius move that you pull while you're talking about topics. No one agrees with that. No one believes him. It's all a joke. He's just the only person that's not in on the joke. So when he starts doing this, there's a point where Joe Rogan's like, okay, bro, the weave is going crazy right now. Let's get back to talking about tariffs. Check out the video.
He was not bad, right? That guy.
Oh, he was phenomenal.
But that's your kind of
Your
person.
weave is getting wide. We're getting wide with this weave.
But isn't it
I want
much
to bring
better?
it back to tariffs.
But wait one second before.
And the fact that he said that, I was actually shocked, because there were so many times in there where you could tell Joe Rogan had been given marching orders. There were things that he could not talk about. And one thing I thought about when I was watching this is that, listen, I'm a small page compared to Joe Rogan and a lot of these other pages out there. But one thing I will tell you guys, I will make this my pledge to you. If I ever grow to a point where I am so big that I have just become a hack so that I could keep access to celebrities, I will quit. There is no way I will allow someone like Donald Trump, anyone, to come on my show and just lie without any pushback at all. And I took a lot of flack. I've taken flack on Twitter. I've taken flack here on YouTube for calling out Charlemagne the Fraud. I called him out because he allowed Laura Trump on his airwaves to lie. And then I called him out when people were applauding him for kind of going in on Anderson Cooper. And I took a little bit of flack for that because people don't think I should be calling someone like him out, because there may be a point where my page gets big enough that, maybe I want to interview him, or maybe I'm at the same events as him or anything like that. I don't care. I absolutely do not care. If I get to a point where I am not actually asking real questions or questioning people or calling them out on BS, I will stop doing this. I don't want to get to that point. I don't want access to people just to allow them to lie to me. And that's what was going on the whole time. There was so much rambling. I'm trying to get it all in because, believe me, you don't want to waste your 3 hours. I did it for you. My brain is just like, right now. But there was a point in there, just to get to some of the rambling that Donald Trump does. He one point in there, he goes, I have a son, very smart, tall, barren. Like, what? I'm sitting there thinking, what is he talking about? And he talks about how Barron told him that Joe Rogan's podcast is very big. It was obvious that Joe Rogan was told, do not bring up the January 6th insurrection. Because when they talked about Donald Trump saying the election was stolen, Joe Rogan basically went with it. I have seen shows where Joe Rogan has said that's some kooky stuff, where he said, he had all these court cases, they didn't come through and all that stuff. On this podcast with Donald Trump, he allowed him to just go on about that stuff. There was a point in there I thought was absolutely crazy, where Donald Trump said, I don't want to waste a bunch of time talking about cement on your show because this show is too valuable for me to waste time. It was 3 hours. It went so long that Donald Trump was 3 hours late to his next event, where we saw a bunch of people in Michigan just leaving because there was an announcement that he was going to be so late. They all just left. It went 3 hours. He wasted a lot of time. When I tell you they wasted a bunch of time on nothing, like you've seen Donald Trump waste time, this was the Super Bowl of wasting time. Just rambling for days. They talked about 20 to 30 minutes about the UFC, Donald Trump pretending he knew things. And again, if you happen to go down the road and watch it, here's another thing you'll see. You will see Joe Rogan actually trying to help him, trying to give him talking points and steer him in the direction of things Joe Rogan knows people would rather hear. And Donald Trump, he was barely going with that. I mean, there were times where Donald Trump was going off a tangent and Joe Rogan say, well, you mean this, right? And he, oh, yeah, that's what I meant and stuff. And there's times where Donald Trump is like jokingly saying this, he just so much rambling. They covered every one of the talking points. It was exactly when I told you guys there was going to be no substance in this debate, in this podcast, when I told you guys that it was going to be a ramble fest and Donald Trump was just going to be allowed to sit on his airwaves and lie without any pushback, it was exactly that. It was absolutely exactly that. There was no substance. It was 3 hours of a waste of time of Donald Trump doing what he does, talking about Joe Biden, talking about Kamala Harris, lying about everything. He even brought up sex changes in schools. He said something about your kid goes to detention, they're taken out of detention, and they're given a sex change operation. Do you believe Joe Rogan listened to that and just went, uh-huh? There was a lot of points in there where Donald Trump was just making stuff up and Joe Rogan was just sitting there going, uh-huh, uh-huh, uh-huh. How do you sit there, allow someone to say that a kid goes into detention, has a sex change operation, and you don't at least ask, Where? Honestly, I'm being 100% honest with you guys. If I knew of a school that was just taking kids, giving them sex change operations at the school without parental consent, I would be the first person trying to picket in front of that school saying, this is not right. How Joe Rogan doesn't ask, how no one has ever asked, huh? Where's this happening? Where can we send our letters of disgust to the school that's doing this? Never asked a question about it. Was allowed to just say that without any questions asked. And there was a lot of times in there, like I said, where Joe Rogan was just saying, There were times also where Donald Trump would say something and Joe Rogan would say stuff like, oh yeah, I saw a TikTok where blah, blah, blah. And it's a TikTok that I've seen that we know is not true, that's been debunked, a staged TikTok. Joe Rogan is not much smarter than Donald Trump. Joe Rogan, and here's one of the things I really think is going on there. I think Joe Rogan is busy. The guy does UFC, he does his podcast, he does stand-up comedy. I don't think he has time to take in actual information. So there's a lot of times where Joe Rogan is exposing himself for not being a very intelligent person, because you can tell he has no depth of knowledge on any of these issues that they're talking about. There was a point in there where Donald Trump is talking about history and giving unfactual things. He talked about Abraham Lincoln being depressed because he lost his son. Abraham Lincoln's son died after Abraham Lincoln. It made no sense, but Joe Rogan sat there and he's like, because he doesn't know either. So it was really just two dudes who aren't very intelligent, rambling about a bunch of stuff that is going to do nothing for any single person in America. It was a complete waste of time. I'm glad I took the time to watch it so you guys don't have to. If you choose to go down that road, let me know in the comments what you think, or let me know in the comments what you thought of me talking about this. It was crazy. But hey, I did it for you guys. So again, if you guys like what you hear, please like, please share, please comment, please subscribe. I really do appreciate you guys. Period.
Don't want no enemies or ops. Envy in they heart, I tell them stop. Vacation on the yacht.